All right, welcome to In Other News. I am Matt Margolis.
And I'm Lauren Weldon. We are Margolis Weldon. We are estate planning and elder law attorneys with offices in Park Ridge. And the goal of this presentation today is to share some information on topics that we feel like are timely and relevant to our viewership. With interest rates going up and the markets being rather interesting for the past couple of years, we thought a real estate roundtable made sense.
And today we are fortunate enough to be here with a realtor, Danielle Adante, a real estate attorney, Brian Grill, and a mortgage broker, Barb Patterson. Brian Grill has been practicing real estate law for 13 years, starting at the bottom of the market, cutting his teeth on short sales and bank-owned properties. Brian's represented clients in virtually every type of real estate transaction, both commercial and residential, purchase, sales, leases, condominium associations, co-ops, and commercial refinances. When Brian is not helping clients navigate their real estate needs, he and his wife of 13 years are busy trying to navigate raising their 3 boys who are 11, 9, and 6. Barb Patterson is a residential mortgage loan officer with Next Mortgage. Buying a house is one of the biggest purchases people will ever make and can oftentimes be stressful. Barb's #1 goal is to make sure the process of obtaining the mortgage is simple and hassle-free. She's a 20-year resident of Libertyville and loves to play golf, as do I, in her free time. And to take us home here is Danielle Adante. Danielle is known as being a well-respected and innovative provider of real estate services and referral business throughout the Northwest suburban market. After more than 6 years serving residential real estate clients as an expert market analyst, tireless advocate, and fierce negotiator, she has finally established herself as an award-winning top producer with D'April Properties. Danielle is deeply ingrained in the Arlington Heights and Mount Prospect community. Her mastery of the client-agent relationship has already been a huge asset to D'April Properties as she's implemented and established a multi-tier platform of distinguished marketing tools and techniques that have set the standard in her local market and beyond. So thanks for joining us today, guys.
Thanks for having us.
All right, Barb, let's get started. Let's start talking about interest rates. I know that's on the minds of a lot of people these days.
Sure is.
So tell me a little bit about the current interest rate environment, and are there any tools or tips for people out there trying to seek relief from these increasing rates?
Yeah, well, so I guess it's no secret that rates have jumped up quite a bit. I think we're up almost over 4% over last year. Just to kind of put that in perspective, if you have a $400,000 loan, your payment this year is going to be almost $1,000 more than it was last year. And to afford that, you're going to have to make another $40,000 a year. So it's had a drastic impact on home buyers. Even though the rates are still, they're right around, well, yesterday we had a little bond rally. The inflation report came in. It was better than expected, although still not great. And the rates dropped a little bit. I saw probably about a 0.5% drop just in one day from that news. But it's a little, as you said, the market's a little tumultuous, so we don't know what's going to happen, if that's going to stick, if it's going to keep going in that direction. But, just to also keep it in perspective is that a rate of 7% is still below our historical average of 8%. So we've just got really spoiled the last few years.
True. So are there any tips or tricks for home buyers looking for some rate relief other than just kind of watching the market?
Yeah, there are a few things. Adjustable rate mortgages or ARMs, like those were not a thing for a very long time because rates were so low. Who would want an adjustable rate? We are starting to see those come back. The ones that I've been seeing were about somewhere between 0.5% and 0.75% lower than a fixed rate. The second thing that we're seeing a lot of now are buy downs, and that's where it's typically used as a seller incentive, where they will offer money towards buying down the rate. So if say the rate's 7% and you do a 2-1 buy down, that means for your first year, your rate's going to be 2% lower at 5%. Your second year is going to be 6%, and then the third year will be your full on 7%.
Okay, very good. Do you anticipate any future changes, anything to anticipate regarding rates? I know that's a loaded question, but what do you think will happen?
I always like to say, if I knew the answer to this question, I wouldn't be sitting here, I'd be on a beach somewhere. But The smart people are predicting that inflation's going to start coming down. It's going to continue to drop, and as that does, so will the rates, because inflation is the enemy of rates. So the predictions are that sometime probably around second quarter next year, maybe we'll be near 5%. So that's good.
Okay.
But one thing that
Yeah.
some lenders are starting to offer is an incentive to, not wait for those rates to go down, but buy now and know that we will refinance your loan next year when the rates are lower for either no fees or very little fees. So that's kind of a new thing that's popped up. It's a little more incentive just to kind of get people off the stick.
Okay, that sounds good. Brian, your turn. So tell me what you're seeing from the attorney perspective. Are we seeing some fierce negotiations on attorney review? What are things like out there for commercial real estate? Tell us all about it.
Good question. So regarding attorney review requests, the requests are pretty similar, but buyers who may think that they are getting, a certain rate, but then find out they're getting a little bit higher rate than they expected, and so the payments are higher. They kind of hold fast into some of those attorney review requests that they dig in a little bit more than they have in the past. For residential, the market's kind of slowed down from my perspective. It's also the slower time of the year. Aren't people trying to get out of their homes and downsize because their kids are off to college. There aren't people trying to get into homes and into the school districts before their kids get into schools, before enrollment starts. So it's also the slow time of the year, but the interest rates obviously don't help. So from my perspective, the residential market has slowed down quite substantially.
That's good to know. Any other things or tips you want to talk to us about commercial? Commercial is kind of a different animal altogether.
It is a different animal, and it's actually a bit more creative. So first of all, commercial hasn't really slowed down the way residential has. Commercial, it's much less emotional. It's much less, time sensitive. If a deal is a good deal, the deal is going to happen on the commercial side. But what I am seeing there's a lot more 1031 exchanges. So people deferring their tax obligations, rolling that tax money or tax obligation forward into another deal. And I'm also seeing a lot of more owner financing. So where the seller basically acts as the buyer's lender and gives them a credit of X amount of dollars and rather than collect that money up front at the closing, they collect that money over time with interest associated. So it's a bit more creative with commercial deals.
Good to know.
I'm going to jump in really quick just to add on to that, Brian. Do you feel like the seller financing is a result of the interest rates? And are they offering from a seller financing perspective, are they offering the financing at a lower rate than what a buyer might have to pay on the open market?
That's a great question. I think it's multiple things involved. With certain clients that want to slow down and get rid of their real estate and not want to buy more real estate, it's a good solution for them because they get their money at plus 6% or whatever interest they're going to get. So they get the money out. Yeah, they don't get all their money up front, and there's a risk associated that we try to obviously minimize for them. And so there are multiple factors involved in that. So and it's also on the buyer side, if they can get 6%, especially on a commercial loans tend to be higher interest rates, then get 6%, and the residential interest rate 7%. It's good for the buyer too.
Right. Interesting. Danielle, before we jump into another question for you, do you have any comments on what Barb or Brian just discussed?
Yeah, I think what's important to keep in mind is, we talk a lot about different arenas and they all impact each other, but they are separate. So sometimes I think that people forget that what's happening in the economy or in the, market with interest rates doesn't necessarily mean it's the same thing in the real estate market. And in the real estate market, every micro market, meaning, if you're in Chicago versus the suburbs, every micro market functions differently too. So how do we navigate that together? Having a team, like Brian as an attorney, myself as a realtor, Barb as a lender, us working together to really advocate for how we can put you as a buyer or seller in your best position. Overall, the market, we know the interest rates have gone up, but when we talk about the market as a whole in terms of values, I think people expect that there's going to be this dramatic decrease in property values or in pricing, and so they want to wait. That's not necessarily what the economists are predicting. So the chief economist for the National Association of Realtors is, he's predicting that we'll see a decline, but in half the US markets, and stability in the other half. And so what they're seeing is they're predicting a 5 to 10% decrease, but in those markets that were the most dramatic. So when they talk about that, we talk about California, Florida, some of those markets appreciated in the last 2 years, 17%, 13%. So when you talk about a 5 to 10% decline in those markets, what you have to remember is that's still normalizing. That's not really a dramatic price drop off, that's normalizing. The Midwest, they're predicting to be more stable because we've been more affordable. So I think what's important to know is that because we're in still a low inventory market, we're still in more of a seller's market, and we really have been over the last 2 years. So it's important to try to take advantage of that. As Barb mentioned, the rates are still historically low, and we're seeing this inventory not really, rise either. We've slowed a little bit, but we're not seeing a jump. And even if I just talked about one micro market, Arlington Heights, in the last 12 months, we appreciated 7%. That's over 12 months. But in the last month, we've seen just a 2% decline or drop off. That's not really a lot. So the more people wait to try to combat the rates, you're not really countering that with a dramatic price adjustment. So it is smart to marry your house and date your rate. And so you work with, Barb and I to say, okay, what can we do? Is it that 2-1 buy down? So are we negotiating a seller credit that allows you to buy down your rate? So it's not coming at a cost to you. It's something that the seller would credit you at closing. We would put that in the contract. And, that chunk of money, that differs per purchase price. Barb is more an expert in that, but, they calculate what the interest payment is total. So if your loan is $350,000, maybe that's an $8,000 credit. That $8,000 credit may save you a couple $100 a month or more. Whereas, to get that, you'd have to take $20,000, $30,000 off the purchase price, which isn't happening. So there is a way to get the same outcome, but do it a little differently. And so that's where we really work together, combat the interest rates. Brian being in really close communication with an attorney to talk about taxes. Taxes in Cook County haven't come out yet. There's an increase. So how we can, work through that in attorney review to protect the buyer is another, thing to offset some costs. So I think it's, really coming down to having a great conversation with your team, with the three of us to help, set you up for success and talk about your goals and what's going on in your micro market.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I was going to ask you, what we were going to ask you is, how can you be a smart seller in today's market? But it sounds like really, what we should be more concerned about is how can we be smart negotiators from a buying standpoint? Because it seems like from what you're saying, it's a seller's market, right? Over the last two years or so, we've seen house prices totally increase over the last couple of years. So, do you have any tips for buyers, to help them from a negotiating standpoint, especially because we know, I think you also commented that inventory is low. So anything for buyers to help?
So for the buyers that would be talking about that credit, now that helps the buyer more. I mean, it helps both. That's a win-win on both sides. So as a seller advantage, it's better for you to give $8,000 than drop 30,000 and but the buyer still gets the same outcome. So they still get that same win of saving. Or even if they did in something to discuss with someone like Barb is just a flat regular buy down, because maybe they can't qualify, at the price they want with the 2-1 buy down, but maybe just a little bit of a drop. If they bought down a 30-year interest rate, they can qualify. So that would be something with the lender. But for buyers, that's just, knowing their goal and their numbers, because what buyers have to remember is you're not actually buying the house, you're buying your mortgage, you're buying your monthly payment. So, how do we make this work so that you're buying a monthly payment that works for you, that doesn't push you out of your comfort zone? And for sellers, it's the same thing. Can we offer that incentive that helps you and helps the buyer? It's also knowing to realistically, yes, we're in a low inventory market, but it isn't June and July. So trying to list your house $30,000 more than it's worth isn't going to work in this market anymore. Buyers are savvy. They're a little more conservative and reserved. So it's coming on, and you still have the ability to capture on a good market, but pricing appropriately and making your house, the best in that price range when you sell it.
I would add one thing for buyers, and it's and Danielle can let me know if I'm correct or not on this. I don't know if it's such a big deal anymore as far as multiple offers, but one thing that when we were seeing that is, every deal was multiple offers, was for the buyer to be pre-approved, not just through the automated underwriting system, but full-on documentation in front of a live underwriter, that we can get them approved. So the seller can be more confident that person's mortgage is actually going to go through.
100%. And knowing that, as a listing agent, I call every single lender that I have an offer on. And if that lender doesn't answer the phone or doesn't know anything about the clients, the purchasers, that's not a good sign to me as a listing agent, and that can hurt you. And that's why, sometimes, it's really important that you're choosing a person that's responsive, that knows your file really well. And like Barb said, it's been through, in front of an underwriter, and she can speak to that. And that makes you a much more solid candidate, especially if 2 buyers are putting in the same offer. Those little things set you apart.
I can kind of reiterate that also. I see clients that same offers or similar offers, I've seen clients take less money, slightly less money, because they're more confident in that pre-approval from one of the lenders or not. So yeah, the pre-approval and your team is important in any real estate market, especially when you've got a real estate market that's fluctuating, and people are trying to kind of feel out what's exactly happening. So your team is very important to help you out.
Great.
Awesome. Well, this has been great. I don't want to speak for Lauren, but I definitely learned a lot here from you guys.
Yeah.
A lot of great information. I'm sure that everybody that's tuning in got a lot out of this as well. Again, just a really hot topic right now. So we appreciate all your time, Danielle, Brian, Barb. Really appreciate you guys joining us today and taking some time out to spread the wealth or knowledge. And from Lauren and I, thank you very much.
Very, very thank you.
Thanks so much for having us. Appreciate it.
Of course.
Thank you.
So, and we'll see all our viewers next time for
Exactly.
some more.